Hey nerds, what's up? Today's video is going to be my favorite books of 2020. I'm so excited to discuss, and let's get right on into it. I have 16 books of 2020 that I really want to talk about, and I know everyone's been doing like cute numbers, 21 books that they want to see in 2021, 20 favorite books of 2020. But I didn't want to add books that didn't matter to the list, and I also couldn't decide how to bring it down from 16 to even 15 or 10. Like, it wasn't a good enough section. So I do vaguely have these in a list from number 16 all the way to number 1. As we get closer to the top, it's a little bit more distinct, but the first few books are all kind of like, they could have been in any number of this part. So yeah, that's where we're at. So, moving into the series, number 16 is The Companion. This book is a mystery, I think is where it would land. It's a young adult book, and this book follows a girl who, at the start of the novel, her parents have died in a car crash, so she's been moved into living in foster home. I think it's all girls, but it doesn't really matter. She doesn't stay there long because it turns out that this mystery family has decided that they're going to if not legally adopt her, at least bring her into their home and let her live there. They're very affluent, and they knew one of her parents, but she's never met them before. And so she goes into the home. She has not yet met. They have 2 children. She doesn't get to meet the son right away, and the daughter has some very serious illness that is basically making her catatonic. And from there's this whole mystery, and she's trying to figure out what's what, and she is trying to figure out kind of what's their goal in bringing her into the home, other than being the companion for the catatonic daughter, and why do they care enough about bringing her in to the family and stuff. This book was very good. I did guess the reveal about halfway through, I would say, but it was really well done. There was a lot of who to trust moments and who can you trust and stuff like that, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Also about all of these books, some of them are 4, some of them are 4.5, and then the closer we get to the top spot, they're 5 stars. But I'm not going to go into ratings necessarily because they made it onto my list for a reason. So anyways, that was number 16. Moving into number 15 on the list, we have Horrified by Katrina Leno. If you've been watching all of my videos since I started making them again in December, then you've heard me talk about Horrified quite a lot in these videos, so I'll try to be short and sweet. But basically, this is the 3rd Katrina Leno book I've ever read, and it is a horror mystery paranormal, and it's about this girl named Jane whose dad dies unexpectedly, and her mother decides to move from the West Coast to her childhood home back in Maryland on the East Coast. And when she gets to this town, everybody thinks that childhood home is haunted, and then little do we know that Jane starts seeing things in the house. So there's, again, kind of a mystery element to this book, and it is creepy. There were definitely times when I couldn't read this alone. I had nightmares, and I am a wimp, so grain of salt on that, but I really, really enjoyed it. Moving on. Number 14 is The Cruel Prince. Again, if you've been watching since I started making videos again, you've also heard about this one. I read this because I was going through the 2019 Goodreads Choice of Winners and The Wicked King, the sequel one. So I read this one, and I've also now since read The Wicked King. But this book gets a moment on the list. So again, this series is well loved in the bookish community, and you've probably heard me talk about it if you watch my other videos. So basically, this book follows a girl named Jude, and her twin sister, when they were young, from the human world were taken by Fae because the Fae man, his daughter is their half-sister, and so he just took them all in, killed their parents, and now this human is living in Fairy. She really wants to have some power because humans are considered second-class citizens in Fae, so she's looking to try to figure out how to gain some power. She makes a bargain, and the story goes from there. People on the internet are all obsessed with Carden and Jude and the romance, but I don't even understand what romance. But given the love from the bookish community and moving that away, just my own thoughts, I really liked this story. I love the political aspect of it. I feel like that is so much like delved into, and I'm loving all of the like intrigue and the like who can you trust, who's who, and what's what, and how to move forward, and how can she get power when she's just a human type of a thing. I'm loving it. I only have to read Queen of Nothing, and I've heard very mixed things about it, so I'm very nervous. But moving on into number 13, The Silent Patient. This is an adult thriller mystery. I think it's really more of a mystery. So this follows two perspectives, and mostly what's important is we're following this guy who is I think he's a therapist. We're in England, so some of the terminology is a little bit different, but I think from what I understand, he's a therapist, not a psychiatrist. And anyways, early on in his career, this very famous artist murdered her husband and was sent to an insane asylum, essentially, because her lawyer pled for her not guilty by reason of insanity. So he now has made it his mission to work with her, and he gets this job opportunity, and he starts working with her as a silent patient. She doesn't speak since she murdered her husband. She's never spoken a word, so his whole goal is to get her to speak and to tell him what happened the night of the murder. I didn't guess what the reveal was until like 2 pages before it happened, so I think that was just because I wasn't paying close enough attention. I wasn't really trying to figure out what the reveal is. I was just like in it along for the ride. I read this book very quickly too. I could not put it down. It was really, really fun and entertaining. So that's that. Moving on. Number 12 is Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. I don't know how to say her name. Sorry. But this book is my first Nina LaCour, but I do have quite a few of her books on my TBR. I got this as an ARC from NetGalley, so I did read the ARC of it, not the final copy, but it was so good. This is another like paranormal, dealing with trauma and grief and stuff, and I just really loved how Nina LaCour chose to like use the paranormal aspects to discuss what trauma and grief looks like. It was just really fascinating. This is a young adult novel as well, and we follow a girl whose parents have died. She's been in the foster care system, and when she turns 18, in case you didn't know, when you turn 18 in the foster care system, you just are on your own. You don't have anything else. So she had been in a home for a long time, and it was a good family, but the family decides they want to have a kid, and she decides to try to get this internship at this ranch house that brings in only kids from the foster care system as adults to help care for the foster care kids who are currently in their care. And it's kind of a like ranch house that is self-sustaining, so they like grow food there and stuff like that, and they have a school on their site and things like that. So she gets this position and she goes and lives on the ranch, and it's dealing with things that have happened in the past for her as well as some of our other characters. I absolutely loved the relationship between our very young adult main character, I don't remember her name now, and the little kid that she's like paired with to help in the classroom. He was just so cute, and yeah, I loved everything about this book. Okay, moving on. Number 11 is Harrow Lake. This book was so fascinating. I also got this book in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. I got an ARC of it, and I also had an ARC of the companion. Forgot to mention that. Yeah, so Harrow Lake. This book follows the daughter of basically like either Stephen King or like maybe Steven Spielberg or something. Like, it felt very much like Night Film, but better, I think. It also had like a lot of It vibes. It just was a combination of so many good, like, horror. Again, like, I don't usually read horror, but I read a lot of horror this year. Did I realize that I like horror in books? I'm having a crisis. Okay, so this book follows the daughter of, like, this esteemed filmmaker who makes horror films. Her mom died when she was young, and he met her mom in a small town when he was filming, and she became, like, kind of his, what's the term, like, his muse, I guess, and she was the lead in all of his films from there on until she passed. So the dad gets in some very big accident or whatever. He was attacked, and so then he sends the daughter to the town to go live with her grandma, whom she's never met. And from there, a bunch of stuff starts happening because people think that the town is haunted that they live in, and two, they also are obsessed with his films that were set there because it, like, put the small town on the map. It was so good. So good. I really, really liked. Okay, we're moving into the top 10. So on number 10 is The Lucky Ones. Oh my god. This book deals with grief and survivor's guilt. Wow. It has some significant emotional turmoil going on in this book. We follow a young adult novel about a girl whose twin brother died in a school shooting that she survived. And she feels guilty about it, and she survived and he didn't, and all this stuff. And oh my god, it was so good. I also got this for an ARC from NetGalley. Just wow, how impactful this book was. I feel like it could really be something very useful, like, as a tool to give, like, help work through some of the same feelings that our main character is feeling, for somebody who might have been through either a similar experience or something like that. Wow, it's so good. I don't even really have a lot to say about the plot because that's what it's about. Really, really good. Moving into a lighter feel, finally, first one on the list that's, like, nice and light, is number 9, which is Faking It. Oh my gosh. I also got this book on ARC from NetGalley. Wow, I got a lot of ARCs, and I loved a lot of ARCs this year. Faking It is an adult novel. It's like an adult contemporary about this woman who has 3 kids, and she's also a teacher at this school. It's a British novel, and simultaneously as being a teacher, and, like, her kids are preteen, teenage, and they all just, think she's mom, she's boring, etc. She is also under a secret pseudonym pen name as a sexy author. She writes smut, and so her book has come out, and she's trying to keep this secret from her kids. Her husband is aware of it and on board, and they are the cutest couple I've ever met. The, like, parenting style was adorable to watch as well. And then, of course, we just have this, like, hilarious... The plot of itself is her deciding how to be her pen name so that she can feel, rejuvenized. And I think she like, tries to call herself a goddess or something. So she's, like, trying to figure out how to, like, feel like how she should feel being the author of a smutty novel, and it was just so fun. There's this hilarious scene where her and her friends get together and do a Tupperware party where they bring all of the toys and they're selling the toys, and wow, I loved everything about this book. So moving on. All right, number 8 is You Are Not Alone, and this book follows this girl who at the beginning of the novel, she's getting onto the subway. She watches this girl die by suicide at the train station. She jumps in front of the train, and she's just horrified, and it really impacts her severely. And so she's, like, trying to figure out who that woman was and all this stuff. And so she ends up going to the funeral and meeting some of the girl's friends, and thrilling things happen from there. I don't really want to talk any more about it, but basically it's kind of an unreliable narrator. We don't know necessarily who to trust or what's the truth in this novel for a lot of it, and I loved it. Okay, moving on to number 7. Another thriller. This one is a young adult thriller, and it's called They Wish They Were Us. This book follows, it feels a lot like Dark Academia, and it is one of the best novels that I've read that has this, like, kind of secret society inside of school, fucked up situation type of a thing. But this one does take place in high school. We follow basically like this big popular group. They're like the best of the class as far as grades go, and they're the most popular. They're the ones who throw all the parties and etc. So we're following one of the senior girls, finally at the top of, the game. And they're bringing in the freshmen and into the group. So they basically, this book is like, has, hazing in it and stuff like that. It felt a lot like the same concept that you might see in a sorority or fraternity story of bringing in the freshmen. But it is both girls and boys in this group. And yeah, we follow some real fucked up situations. It was really, really good. I loved it. Number 6 is a totally different type of novel than what's been on here so far, I think, which is Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. This is probably the most controversial of the options that I've made, but I abso-freaking-lutely loved this book. So this one is the book we've been waiting for. It is Twilight in Edward's perspective. Oh my god, Edward is the worst person on the planet. Like, I cannot believe... This just made him so creepy. It felt like it was a thriller. No wonder I loved it. What? Like, I cannot believe that this is the book that we got. He is a little bit... I mean, you have to, like, be prepared for the Edward hating himself, like, thing that is always the case, but I just can't believe that this finally came out. Like, I can't believe she actually wrote it. So, if you don't know all of the things that have happened with Midnight Sun, basically... many years ago, Stephenie Meyer was writing this and it got leaked on the internet, and then Stephenie Meyer went, nope, I'm not writing this anymore. So she released the unedited manuscript that was unfinished. It was about half of the book, because I read the manuscript actually this year too, right before she announced that she was going to be giving us this. So what a coincidence. Well waited for, long waited for. So yeah, I deeply enjoyed that book. Top 5. Are we ready? Okay. Number 5 is Pretty Girls. This is another adult thriller. Oh my god, this book is so fucked up. Please make sure that you read anything that has trigger warnings if you are sensitive to content such as torture, rape, sexual assault, like body harm, gore, things. So this book follows 2 perspectives. We're following a woman who has a teenage daughter who is going to like a very fancy prep school on scholarship. She hates all of the women that she's surrounded with. Her and her boyfriend are both like recovering addicts, and they don't fit in. And we also follow a woman who doesn't have any kids, and she and her husband are like meeting up at this spot. That she's like the perfect woman, she's still thin and blah blah blah. They do talk a lot about weight in this book, so that's also something to keep an eye out for if you're sensitive to that. But yeah, so she's just this like gorgeous woman who's got it all together in her 40s or whatever, and her husband are walking home or walking to the car or whatever after their meal, and he tries to like get all horny in the fucking alley, and then suddenly some random dude comes up, tries to steal from them, and ends up killing her husband in front of her. And that's where this story starts, and it's nowhere near where this story goes. But I can't tell you anymore because spoilers. It is so good. There's like kind of a mystery element and the thriller element. Oh, all at the same time, which is why I brought up the teenage daughter, is there was a missing girl story that's going on at the same time. So it's so good. Please read it if you can. Number 4 is a reread, so I guess I could have gotten rid of this one out of everything that I wanted to do, and if I wanted a top 15 or prettier number than 16, but it's A Court of Thorns and Roses. I reread this, and I loved it. If you don't know anything about it, it's about a girl named Feyre who is on the side of the wall where the humans live, and she accidentally kills a fairy, and so then the Spring Lord comes and tells her either die tonight in, penance, or you can come live with me forever. The humans and the fairies don't like each other, so this is a big deal. And she goes, and it's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I'm so excited for the second one. Yeah, I loved this, I think, even more than I liked it the first time, which is saying something. So, moving on. Number 3 is a young adult contemporary, and it's a sad one. It's A Heart in the Body and the World, and this follows a girl who is dealing with some grief and trauma, and she's a runner, and so something happens at the beginning of the book that triggers her, and she decides to run all the way. She just decides to start running, and she makes it like almost to the state line, I think, and then she just decides like, well, what if I kept going and try to go all across to the East Coast from the West Coast? And so then her grandpa is following her in a mobile home to make sure she's safe and everything, and she's going on this run, and it was so good. I loved the relationship between grandpa and granddaughter. I also loved a lot of Italian heritage and stuff that comes into here and culture, so I really liked the addition of that, and it was so good. I loved it. Okay, moving on. Number 2, I can't believe we're almost done with this list. Number 2 and number 1 were very difficult decisions to be made. I ended up choosing number 2 as House of Blood and Earth, Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. This is her first novel in a new series. This is an urban fantasy novel about a girl named Bryce. I don't even know how to tell you how this story starts, because there's this huge thing that happens at the beginning of the novel that I don't want to tell you about. It is in the flap, so it's not technically a spoiler, but I didn't know about it going in, and I think that's the best way to do it. So if you haven't yet heard the whole synopsis of House of Earth and Blood, please, I really suggest go into it and just read it. The first 50 pages will blow your fucking mind. This book is overall about a girl named Bryce who's part fae, part human, and in this urban setting we have things like technology and cell phones and stuff, and we also have mixed race, werewolves, vampires, fae, you name it, it's probably in here. There's mermaids and kelpies and all of that stuff too, and everything is in this book. So we are following Bryce, who has a connection to this set of murders that are happening in the city. And so the prime minister or whatever gives her a task to look into it and gives her a bodyguard because of her, closeness to the situation, to also help her while she's looking into it. And there's sexy times, and oh my god. You give me a Sarah J. Maas book, and it's gonna be on my top favorites of the year. I don't know what to tell you. I'm trash. It's fine. Number 1. I'm so excited to tell you number 1, and you might have been able to guess it if you've been watching this last month's worth of videos. I have chills just thinking about it. It's City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. Oh my god! I have one book left in the series. I'm not okay. I'm not fine. So this book follows a girl named Nari who is living her best life in 18th century Cairo. She is swindling all of the rich folk in the area, and she does have some healing powers, but she doesn't really, think of them as magic. And this family comes to her and asks her to do basically an exorcism, and she's like, sure, wink, wink, yeah. Give me money, yes. But then she accidentally ends up doing the exorcism and then summons a jinn or a genie, a deva, whatever, to her help when she has done that. And then the jinn is like, hi, you're not a human because you were able to summon me, so let me take you to the city of Brass, which is, the magical center of our world that you didn't know existed. We have this adventure story of Nari kind of getting to know some basic information about who she might be or what she might be. And then on top of that, we're also following Ali, who is one of the princes of the king of the city of Brass. So we're getting a little bit of the politics. We're learning kind of how the dynamics work in the city, and the magic system is fucking phenomenal. The politics is the best part for me. I love anything with intense political dynamics. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. If you haven't read it, please read it. I was behind the times. I don't know what I was doing with myself, and I'm so glad that I've now read it. So I love it so much that I just recently read it. I read it in November, I'm pretty sure. And then I read the sequel in December/January. And I need to read the last one, and then I'll probably reread them because I need them. I need it. I need more time in the world. It's so good. Okay. Those are all of my favorite books of 2020. 2020 was a weird year for reading. I think we all are feeling very similar. I think people either ended up reading a lot more than usual or they ended up reading a lot less than usual. And it was kind of one or the other hard. For me, I did end up reading less than usual, but I still read a decent amount. So the last 2 years since I graduated college, my reading amount of books went from a standard of 45, 30, anywhere in that range before graduating college, and then since I've graduated, my BA is what I'm talking about here, not my ITP. Since graduating my BA, I've been standardly reading about 90 books a year. This year I only read 70, so it was still a good reading year, but it just wasn't up to the norm of how often I read. I definitely went through a big portion of time where I didn't want to read anything. I couldn't focus. I couldn't. And so all I was doing was watching Grey's Anatomy because I love that story. It's close to my heart and it's very comfortable. So yeah, reading was a weird time in this season of life with COVID and everything, but I read some really amazing books simultaneously. I feel like I did, because I wasn't reading as much, I was being really picky with what I was reading, and I only picked up books that sounded really good. So I don't know about my stats because I didn't bother looking this year, but I would venture to guess that my stats are high on my 4 and 5 stars, which I've noticed that as time goes on, I continue getting better about knowing, will I like this book? And so my standard ratio of 1 to 3 star books versus 4 and 5 star books tend to be really skewed towards good books for me, just because I'm not willing to pick up books that I don't want to read. That's not the type of reader I am, because if I don't like a book, I'm not going to finish it. That's some general information of the 2020 reading year. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and also check out all the links down in the description box if you want to be friends with me on any other platform. And I will see you guys very soon with a new video. I make videos every Monday and Saturday, so I'll see you guys soon. Peace out. Bye.